Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Alex Sass Show here at the Glen Zone with Glenn Herring. And once again, we're here to cover some news in our roundtable, which is probably in the 60s right now, because we're so eager to bring you the real news, whatever the real news is. And shortly, you're going to have a very difficult time getting some news in Canada because of this Bill C-18, which we'll mention a little bit later in the news. We talk about it in every episode, but it's vital that we constantly remind you that you live in China, well, China or whatever, North Korea, whatever you think. And it's not as bad as Russia, because in Russia, they have this Russian Ukrainian conflict. And it's, by the way, this is not news, Glenn. This is not news at all. If you look at the news, the non-news will tell you that American troops will not fight in Ukraine, Washington. Really? Is that what they want you to focus on? Also, what they want you to focus on is that U.S. mules sending long-range missiles to Kiev. Well, I guess to prolong the war conflict, to make it more deadly, maybe to piss off more Russians, to get more aggressive with Ukraine or whatever, or to keep you scared. And you know what else? Another thing is not news, Glenn, is that the Russian missile strike in Kramatorsk, Ukraine, kills dozens of Ukrainian officers. And I'm not making fun of dying soldiers, by the way. And as many as 20 mercenaries from NATO countries. So we have two stories that contradict each other. American troops will not fight in Ukraine, which is a NATO country. And we know for a fact that Americans already been on the ground, and we had some news before. And now we have the Russian missile strike that strikes in Kramatorsk and kills NATO soldiers. Okay, so which one of that is real news, Glenn? Or is there something else more important? Or is there a super weapon that they're sending to Ukraine to help them fight the war, Glenn?
Yeah, well, you know what? If U.S. troops... we should send the transgender ones to the front lines first. And that way we could turn the war into a giant comedy fest.
Well, they kind of did, didn't they?
And you were talking about a secret weapon over to Ukraine. We have Greta, the globalist Thunberg. She's out there pushing her agendas again. Obviously, this is paid. This is a 20-year-old girl who at 15 years old said because of climate change, the world was going to end by June 2023. Lo and behold, today is the last day of June of 2023. And, everything still feels the same here.
Well, some people may say you're misrepresenting the facts. She didn't really say the world will be ending by 2023, but it'll be irreversible. I don't see any difference between 5 years ago and now. Minus the fires, which we'll bring up shortly. But look at her in the video that we have here. She looks eager to be there, Glenn.
Yeah, poor. But, it's just a 20-year-old girl, and she's being used for everything. She's probably getting a little fed up. I mean, at a younger age, she loved the attention. And look at me, everybody, look at me. And the globalists did this because that would be popular with the other young kids. They said, oh, you know what? I'm going to be like Greta, and I'm going to follow along, and then I'm going to get a lot of attention, too. But that really didn't fan out too well, and so... This is the problem that she has, and she's being sent all over the world, but now she's saying, it's not working for me. I don't like this anymore. I want a different type of attention.
I just drew a picture in my mind. It's like, imagine Greta waking up one morning and she's like, okay, Greta, you got to go to United States and look at Trump and tell him, how dare you? He's like, okay, it'll be a cool road trip. We'll get you some Louis Vuitton bags or something, whatever. I don't know. And now, imagine the morning, a few days ago when she wakes up, he's like, okay, Greta, you have an important mission. What's that, Mom? What's that, Dad? You got to go to Ukraine. Imagine her reaction. Ukraine, what? I got to go to, what am I going to do there? It's like, save the climate, save the earth from the climate change. They have a carbon issue there. There's too many bombs exploding, especially the ones with, depleted plutonium or uranium or whatever they use there. That's terrible, Glenn. That is, she did not know what she signed up for, and what are they going to send her next?
I don't know, but Trump was right when he said, oh, she looks like such a happy young girl. and now she's in Ukraine visiting Volodymyr Zelensky, the other globalist puppet. And, it's just theatrics, and it's a giant ham show. And she doesn't look too interested on wanting to do this anymore.
Well, climate change also goes into environmental work, as we say. And as a matter of fact, I'm all pro environment and protecting the environment. Like how we shifted from having plastic bags and back to the paper bags, because now there's way too many trees and we have this carbon issue. Oh, hold on. Isn't it contradictory? Why are we cutting trees to make paper bags again? Because aren't the trees supposed to absorb the carbon that we have a difficulty with? But that's the issue. So the thing is, she's actually there to offer professional help. What kind of professional help she can particularly offer? Where she's going to go wave her finger at Putin and say, please don't throw bombs at us anymore. Well, at Ukraine, bad Mr. Putin. And, the President Putin is going to look at her and be like, who's this block? They could have, okay, am I going to sound chauvinist? Couldn't have found somebody before, and I'm not really big fan of Angelina Jolie in terms of her looks and all that, especially lately. But, remember they used to send pretty girls out, Glenn? Now they're sending is it part of the transgender thing? What's her pronouns? They, them? Is that the ideal? Is that they keep pushing this forced behavior on us via people like Greta Thunberg because she looks sort of like boyish good looks kind of thing?
Or is the whole woke project installed by the globalists, funded by the George Soros groups, is it all starting to implode and it's just becoming more visible and realistic to Mr. and Mrs. Average?
Well, Glenn, I'm glad you mentioned it, because a lot of people will call you a conspiracist and say oh, you're making this stuff up, enough already, stop being a conspiracist theorist. Well, this is, brothers and sisters, this is not a conspiracy, because if you look at this particular representation, and we've covered plenty of Larry Fink and his forced behavior kind of language that he got in trouble for, because he exposed, he had to tell you that he's forcing your behavior, and it's up to you to take it or not take it up to your rear end. And hopefully you won't. And I know, no pun intended. But Blackrock, and if you think, why the thing quickening, why thing is speeding up, if you look at this representation specifically, you have a global head of sustainable investing of Blackrock, now is a director of National Economic Council in Biden administration, former chief of staff for CEO. He is now a deputy secretary of treasury in Biden administration. And BlackRock's global chief investment strategist, Mike Pyle, is now chief economic advisor for VP. So he's Kamala's right hand in making those decisions. Glenn, this is no longer a conspiracy. There's plenty of facts there to show you that people like a BlackRock corporation specifically that own the world, run the world.
Yeah, it's a classic example of corporatism, and it's taking control of government, increasing more nepotism, and but people are being aware of it, and there is a push back against this, and a lot of these elites, the people who were, shall we say, elected to run the countries, a lot of them are stepping down because they recognize that the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they don't want that pendulum to take their head off.
They don't, and I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because it's becoming so self-evident, and we mentioned it here on this program at Alex Sass Show, and we're in front of everything, that what happens in when they decimate country like Iraq, they decimate country like Ukraine, where they decimate African countries, South American countries, Central American, when they decimate Canada, who's going to come in? Companies like IMF, organizations like IMF, BlackRock's, European Central Bank, and all of those organizations will come in and offer their help, first of all, to run the test trial projects like CBDCs, the implementing 15-minute cities and new climate change policies, etc., your carbon taxes, but they also going to make money off you. Okay, here's the guy from the European Parliament. Check out. Let's watch him really quick.
Cities that endured for hundreds of years don't exist anymore. We must recognise that these towns, cities and surrounding lands were long been stolen by local oligarchs colluding with global financial capital. This theft quickened with the onset of the war in 2014. The pro-Western government opened the doors wide for massive structural adjustment and private...
When he means pro-Western government, does he mean Western government installed?
Yeah, the puppets of the Anglo-American Empire, obviously, who were the globalists. They were supposedly the creators of the New World Order.
What was her name? Nuland? And what's the other senator? Graham. They're really the best American taxpayer money they spent.
Privatization programs spearheaded by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the IMF, and the World Bank. Zelensky used the current war to concentrate power and accelerate the corporate fire sale. He banned opposition parties that were resisting deeply unpopular reforms to the laws restricting the sale of land to foreign investors. Over 3 million hectares of agricultural land are now owned by companies based in Western tax havens. Ukraine's mineral deposits alone are worth over $12 trillion. Western companies are licking their lips. What are the working class people of...
And they cut his mic off. His mic off. He says, what are the working class people of Ukraine are dying for? And, well, they're dying for this fake ideology, protect yourself, save yourself from the terrible Russians. Do you blame the Russians now? Like, oh, I'm not giving this to IMF. The eastern part of Ukraine, it's a very mineral-rich part of Ukraine. And, between coal and all those other heavy metals as well, they're coming in, they're protecting the stuff. And again, the war is not over. It's really is to kill the people. It's an economic war, but it's war against people. And let's not buy into this divide and conquer, and let's just listen, just watch. If you don't believe me, you don't believe this is a theater. Okay, that Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world, and let's not buy Russian oil, let's not buy Russian coal, let's not buy Russian natural gas, let's not do any services. Glenn, do you know that Swiss-based firms keep Russian fuel flowing still?
Yeah, well, they need the refined oil turned into fuel and plastics, and they need it to keep the economy going. So obviously, they're still going to source it. They're going to try and get around certain sanctions or make it look like they're fitting in with the sanctions that were imposed, like a price limit of $60 per barrel of oil, for example. But whenever you have too much contraction and holding down of something, you're going to get a rebellion, or there's innovative people who find ways to get around things. That's always been a part of the human doctrine.
Well, the innovation that they started with this whole, again, it's back to the Blackrocks and forced behavior, and they have to tell you that you have to use the electric vehicles and solar panels and renewable energies and all that stuff. And now we determined that actually things like windmills and windmill farms, they killing birds by thousands, if not millions. And there's reports that are coming out, environmental reports coming out throughout the Western world, everywhere, stating so. But England is doubling down. Glenn, what do you think is England doubling down on renewable energy, even though the Europe is actually backing off it? Well, you have an idea? I'm sure you do.
They're doubling down. In other words, they're going for broke. It's all or nothing right now. So that's they're forced into that agenda. The UK economy is not doing very well. The government is in complete turmoil between the previous government and the so-called new government and the handoff of power. So no, the UK, the previous empire before the United States, they have a whole pile of issues and problems themselves, like many other countries. And of course, like America and Canada, we're not immune to these problems, and they're manifesting and growing at exponential rates.
But also they have Glenn. They have who the new crowned King Charles III.
Yeah, Chucky the King there coming out with the horns blazing about the new special climate clock. And
He's like the Al Gore's and John Kerry's and Greta Thunberg's combined of England. He's actually, he's equivalent of Justin Trudeau to LGBT. He's like what Justin Trudeau to LGBTQ, King Charles, I believe, is to climate change. Is that fair assessment, or is it close enough? Right. So they launched a doomsday clock. Like they had the Cold War doomsday clock that was supposed to like count down to the possibility, or what's the word I'm looking for, or inevitability of the nuclear war. So, so this one is actually counting down to something. Like they have a date in mind for climate change kind of doomsday thing. What do you think that date is? Okay, let's just watch this.
Climate clock at a summit in London this afternoon. It triggers 150 similar clocks across the major cities of the UK, counting down the seconds to 2030.
Oh, wow, 2030. Is that this anything to do with Agenda 2030, Glenn?
Yeah, and the beginning of the next decade. According to the people of the last decades, like Al, the climate guy Gore, we shouldn't be here now. So, it looks like this is just an agenda. In other words, to find a way to tax people more for our security. We all have to do our part, as if the royal families, for example, or heads of states and governments, as if they do their part.
Well, it's because it's never about saving the climate. It's about enslaving you. It's about capitalizing on making you more poor and making them richer, and eliminating the middle class. And so you cannot rise up, but you can. But be informed. Yeah, what's up?
There is a rising up now. It's a social conservative movement. It simply means normal, actually. And you use this normalcy with discernment through common sense. People are starting to see through the charade, the plays that are going on everywhere, all the people who play their parts in these agendas. And silently, but it's growing rather quickly, is this conservative thinking.
Glenn, I'm glad you mentioned it, but the whole thing with the this quickening and speeding up of a World Economic Forum and Blackrock's agendas, trying to get rid of you. What have been and we covered it here multiple times. And brothers and sisters, you can go back and check out a couple of shows that we have on the fires. But in the last few days, there's more fires that been. Again, we had the smog warning in Montreal and Toronto, and south of us in places like Michigan and New York again. Why you think this is? Obviously, we know they're going to try to implement some kind of climate change things, and they have. In Canada, they already devoted $500 million fund, and the local governments will tell you, oh, those are grants. No, those are not just grants. Those are your taxpayer money. So they set the forest on fire, and it's not just, okay, they dropped a match or they dropped some flammables from a helicopter, but they adding some accelerants to make the fires worse and burn for a long time, and so they cannot be easily put out. And that's why also they don't use local firefighters. That's why they bring fighters from South Africa. Those people don't know how to fight local fires, which makes no sense to us, except that it's all deliberate and they want them to burn hotter and longer. But we have some videos to show you. If you don't believe me, you can watch a little bit of this. This is in Michigan. He has a formaldehyde detector.
Harmful. Barely see it here. Serious. This is what they claim is from wildfires, which is horseshit. The amount of formaldehyde in the air in Michigan, it's on the serious level. Like, we're talking like dangerous here. and it's just going up. I mean, this can cause huge issues.
Well, I looked into it, like what is formaldehyde actually does, brothers and sisters. You can look into it yourself, but at low levels. By the way, Glenn, did you notice like a lot of people wearing masks and all that stuff? They brought it back, and you know, people start to have some breathing issues, and they blame it maybe on the smoke or maybe long COVID. I don't know, maybe long COVID making a comeback.
Plan gimmick part 2.
It actually makes sense, right? So if you do have some respiratory issues and you're thinking about getting a long COVID test, don't, because formaldehyde in the air at low levels, breathing in formaldehyde can cause eye, nose, and throat irritation, which a lot of us do have it. At high levels, formaldehyde exposure can cause skin rashes, shortness of breath, wheezing, and changes in lung function, right? Long COVID, other words. Children, the elderly, and people with asthma or other breathing problems may be more sensitive to the effects of formaldehyde, right? So why are they poisoning us? Why are they accelerating? We covered the story with a train being dropped and derailed into Yellowstone. And seems like Greta should be here looking over those issues versus going to Ukraine. And we know she does not want to go to Ukraine. But okay, let's watch. I have way more videos for you, brothers and sisters.
Angry Beekeeper here. You guys know you're breathing poison right now, right? I walked out of my house this morning and I smelt burning plastic. So I got on the Google right away and I looked, where is this plastic fire? Well, there was no gigantic plastic fire. What we are smelling is the smoke from Northern Ontario and Northern Quebec, the forest fires. Now, what is happening? That wood smoke is going up into the atmosphere and it's mixing with water. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun is causing chemical processes to turn it into formaldehyde and benzene. Yes, I said formaldehyde. We all know what they use that for. And benzene causes cancer at 4 parts per billion. I typically like to make TikToks and spread love and joy and prance around and talk about bees and all things good, but I'm sorry, guys, this TikTok is not about that. The best we can do is stay in our homes with the windows shut, run your air conditioners. That's all I got, guys.
And that's a good point that you brought up, brothers and sisters. And we're here not to bring sad news at all. But it seems like that's exactly what they're trying to achieve. They want to keep you stay put. Remember the whole plan gimmick thing? What was one of the things? Stay at home. Keep your mask on, even in the house. Keep your windows shut. God forbid you sneeze out or fart out, and your neighbor will smell it and die from whatever. So that's the point. That's the point. I think they're trying to use. And Justin had a Freudian slip. It's like, oh, we learned a lot from climate change. I mean, plan gimmick, and we're going to implement the same policies in climate change. So that's what they're doing. They want you voluntarily to stay at home because you obviously don't want to breathe that thing, Glenn. Isn't it true? Like, does it seem like all planned out theater for 2030? That's attack on people. So if it's not the bombs exploding in Ukraine, it's the stuff burning here in Quebec.
Yeah, there's information, there's disinformation. 54%. I just read the other day that 54% of all the new information coming out on the web is done by bots. So, and obviously that could be a bot saying that, but we know that it's progressively becoming more and more bot controlled, all the information, to curb the way, obviously, people think. But what you have to do is watch shows like ours to indoctrinate yourself with the truth, not be indoctrinated with false news by the mainstream media muppets. And so they seem to be losing their power, and people are looking forward to a new type of truth revealing. A lot of people are waking up to the fact that they were led the wrong way. Maybe it has something to do with the spikes that they were forced to take in the last 3-4 years. But no, I get people coming and saying it all the time that they're quite happy that they didn't take the spike. And you get a lot of people who are quite unhappy that they did take the spikes. They were led astray.
Wow. Well, let's remind our audience that chemtrails are real. We will show that video in the
But
last
then
episode.
you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even metallicized paper products. But it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't...
That's what he's called. That's what he's calling it, Glenn. Right? That's just a radar thing. So, but he listed all those things that also could be used in chemtrails and accelerates to actually to increase the fires. We have another video for you, brothers.
The materials that are going into the environment right now, aluminum oxide nanoparticles and barium nanoparticles, these just happen to be the same materials that they use in nanothermate explosives. And so when this stuff settles down out of the air into the environment, it is small enough to be absorbed through the root structure of the trees in the forest. And so when there's a forest fire, and there will be a forest fire, those fires burn dramatically hotter.
Oh, you heard it here. So conspiracy or not, there's plenty of information. It's up to you to put two and two together. But the agenda is still, is to harm you. Is to make you to be a slave to the forced behavior think tanks. They're trying to enslave you in every way possible. So you stay put, you own nothing, you don't go anywhere, and you just become a consumer. So you can order things from Amazon. They'll bring it to your door, like video games, for example, and food, so you don't even have to go to the store. And then if you do want to travel, they're going to try to block you from traveling. Here, Glenn, I got to mention that I was listening to CJD, our fearless government-funded corporation here. They had a show, and a lady on the show, she had something to do with academia from Concordia and McGill. And she says, well, we're trying to make people not drive to downtown, let them take public transportation. So they don't even hide it. They just tell them, this is what we're trying to do. We didn't ask you what you want to do or not. This is for the good of the greater good of, for whatever purpose, right? And yeah, Glenn, what's up?
They say we like who? We mean what they want. What about what everybody else wants?
The people who think they're better than that.
Well, you know what? If you want to walk, take your bicycle, public transit downtown, you think you're doing your part, to go downtown, then you go ahead. But then other people, they use their freedom and their rights to decide what they want to take downtown. And if they want to drive their little car or their bigger SUV, that's what they're going to do. But I don't know why so many people would want to go downtown. It's starting to turn into like a wasteland and full of junkies and garbage and graffiti and empty stores. Like, what's the big rush of going downtown?
And panhandlers and really aggressive panhandlers who are drunk all the time. And like, if you go, it really is horrible, Glenn. It's not a pleasant. And it's not just Montreal, it's most of the inner city cores, right?
Yeah, it's a decay of all the major cities. That's what's going on.
Now in New York, if you want to go visit New York, or if you work around New York, greater New York, and you want to go to Manhattan, it's expensive to go to Manhattan as this with all the tolls on the bridges and the tunnels and everything else. But now they're going to get another, Feds just approved another toll. And if you want to drive into Manhattan, you would have to pay additional $23 to visit Manhattan by car. So that's how they force your behavior. They implement financial penalties, because that's a financial penalty if you're going to drive. You have to take whatever they tell you to take, and that's how they control your behavior. And eventually people will have to do this because, what if you have to go to Manhattan for work? If you go 5 days a week, that's additional $15 you have to spend on your route. Already expensive gas because of Putin's war.
It's Putin's fault. Yeah. Could be. It could be that they're going to implement this until the people vote this government out and a new government comes in with the promises to remove all these restrictions and get back to a free and just society, like what we're supposed to be used to. But they're trying to get us used to this new way, these 15-minute cities.
Brothers and sisters, and we're going to close the show now, and Glenn is right, but I don't necessarily have, I don't have faith in the electoral process anymore, Glenn. Brothers and sisters, I don't have faith in the electoral electoral process, especially if they use computers and machines, and now there's evidence of them being hacked all over the place, and signatures being forged, and even people who double checking the signatures didn't check them correctly or intentionally didn't check them. And I don't know I don't know what to say, Glenn. I don't know if the election can actually change anything, really. Do you think there's still hope for actual election?
Yeah, champ. You know how? It's the silent conservatives. They're going to start becoming less silent and becoming more active. And they're going to reinstall a faith into the democratic electoral system. And there'll be proper representation by the people, for the people. And this is what's going to start happening more and more. And this is why I said before, a lot of the people who were part of this agenda now, the previous agenda, they're starting to see the pendulum swing the other way, and they want out. They see the writing on the wall. The graffiti is there for them. So they're heading out, trying to save whatever left they have of their career.
And I agree with you, Glenn. Keep the hope alive. But you keep the hope alive by keeping your actions up. And you cannot control actions of Trudeau, unfortunately, but you could influence your family, your kids, your spouses, your immediate community, maybe even your church community. Do you go to the church? Join some proper communities. You could, instead of going to Pride Parade, go to the library. There's plenty of libraries in Montreal or something like. I don't know. There's
yeah. It's the last day of Pride Month, so that's it. It's it. The clown show is coming to an end. We're gonna, that's it. This should start dissipating rather quickly because we're gonna start having real problems in our hands. And that's it.
Well, Mental Health Month as well, Glenn. It's Men's Mental Health Month is over too, so now we can all become crazy again. And I don't know, the Rachel Levin or whatever that the Minister of Health, and what's her name? Admiral Rachel Levin. What was her position? She's not the minister, whatever her official
position. In America.
Yeah, in America, she's not a minister, but whatever. She's in charge of all health in U.S., the least healthiest person physically or mentally. That's ironic, right? But brothers and sisters, you stay healthy, you stay mentally fit through your physical discipline, eat well, read the book, read the Bible, go outside. Right now it's summertime, eat good food, do something kind for your brothers and sisters. And for sure, we'll see you on the next one.